And so moving right along, one of the things that Andrew and I want to do on the Global Guessing Weekly podcast, not every week, but most weeks, is make a live prediction on the website Metaculus. And so that is what we're going to do right now. We have not picked the question because we don't want to think about the question
Right.
beforehand. And I think we're only going to give this about 5, 6 minutes of deliberation from finding the question to answering the question, which means we're probably going to suffer on our score. But that's okay, because it's for the podcast. So we're going to
And if
go.
you've read and if you've read our interview with Regina Joseph or watched our interview with Balkan Devlin, we've done a similar exercise where, at the end of the interviews, we'll ask them to make some on-the-spot predictions. Granted, we're giving ourselves a bit more time than whatever we gave them, 30
10
seconds or a
seconds,
minute.
5 seconds, I think.
Exactly. So now I feel bad, but I think it is a useful skill as a forecaster to test yourself, not just doing these sort of long form, really thoughtful predictions, but also testing your intuition and just trying to understand how to approach a question. So
All right.
yes, it's perfect.
So now we have it open, and the podcast is now showing my browser. And so we are in the. And
Yep,
Andrew, can you see it as well?
I can. I also have a window as
Phenomenal
well.
technology. All right. Um, let's see. Which of these look it? When will North Korea have a McDonald's?
The best one. We should just
No.
do that one now.
Wow, we are very out of whack for the nuclear deal versus the community. It'll be interesting to see how this one pans out.
Be very interesting.
I
Yeah, I
think,
think what's interesting about crowd forecasting is that I think oftentimes when people see, oh, it's at 55%, a prediction might be at 55%, I can't make a prediction that's so far from that, or else, it's definitely wrong. So there tends to be this, it's not confirmation bias, but just this, approach to forecasting that can become a bit um, unempirical,
yeah, and I think,
for lack of a
one thing
better
that we
term.
should do is, as Balkan was saying, when how he tries to look at whether or not the community is correct, is try to argue the community standpoint and prediction. And I think perhaps if we continue to see this gap between us and the community, is look back at the Iran nuclear deal and try to argue from the median of 57% and see if we can get to it.
Yep.
But I'll just go back to searching for a question. I kind of like the North Korea nuclear missile one, just because we have a pretty clear
Sure.
base rate of, because North Korea likes to shoot off missiles. Um, it's one
That they
thing that they
do.
like doing.
Yeah, let's pull that one up. So what is
Okay.
the,
The
you show the
question
watchers
is,
what
will
the,
North Korea launch another intercontinental ballistic missile before 2022? This question will resolve positively if a missile with a range of more than 5.5 thousand kilometers, capable of hosting a nuclear warhead, is launched by the North Korean government. Now, the missile has to be capable of. Haven't, like, none of their missiles made it very far?
yeah, I think the missiles haven't made it very far. I'm also not sure when the last time they tested a missile was. I know there were two tests, I think, in 2017. I'm not sure if they've done one since, probably not in 2020. Not that COVID really has anything to do with nuclear tests. I just didn't
Let's
hear anything
see.
about it.
North Korea nuclear test by year. Or, no, missile tests.
Yeah, ICBMs.
List of North Korean missile tests.
Oh, apparently they did a series of short-range missiles in March, marking its first missile test in
In
2020.
March 2020, yeah, but that was short range with an operational range of 240 kilometers. Short term, short term.
And it looks like that followed threats in January of that year, 2020, to resume nuclear and ICBM testing. So it might have just been, a move to try and make their threat more credible, and not actually, a sign of intent that they're doing anything too dangerous.
Now, let's see. North Korea developed nuclear missile programs, and I'm reading the top comment on Metaculus here.
Mhm.
Um, just for people that are only listening to audio,
Oh, that's
It's a
smart.
report from the UN. North Korea maintained and developed its nuclear and ballistic missile programs throughout 2020 in violation of international sanctions, helping fund them with some $300 million. In the past year, North Korea displayed new short range, medium range submarine launch and intercontinental ballistic missile systems at military parades. It is highly likely that a nuclear device could be mounted onto long range, medium range, and short range ballistic missiles.
Hmm.
The member state, however, stated it was uncertain whether North Korea had developed ballistic missiles resistant to the heat generated during re entry.
My initial feeling is that as bad as he was of a president, in my personal opinion, Donald Trump did warm tensions with North Korea quite a bit. Again, going back to our last conversation with Dr. Balkan Devlin, he talked about how he got that prediction about a Trump and Kim meeting back in 20, I think 17 or 18. Very wrong. He thought it wasn't going to happen, but in fact, it ended up happening. Um, so I think it's possible that, if what's the time horizon by 2022?
By
If Biden
2022.
I think it would require a show of force from Biden um, to sort of spur that type of action. Um, and I feel like Biden has enough on his plate. We've been talking about the Abrams Accords and the JCPOA and COVID-19 and racial issues domestically. I feel like, granted, you can do more than one thing at once. I just feel like you know
I
there's not
think,
going to be.
yeah, I think my issue with this is the technicalities of this question,
Oh,
or
sure, yeah.
seemingly
Let's
that
go
I
into
that I
those.
read here, which is right with a missile with a range of more than 5,500 kilometers. Now, who's it doesn't does it have to go 5,500 kilometers? Does North Korea just have to say it's 5,500 kilometers? Because if that's the case, I think it's quite likely that they will test an ICBM and they will say that that ICBM um, is capable of going the full distance, of going, super far. But is
Right, the
that the
missile just has to
truth?
be able to go that distance and carry a warhead. And
Well,
they could just say,
I guess they just have to be able to say that it goes right. Because how else are they gonna test? Like, do they have to like release their missile plans online and have a peer-reviewed journal study say that right?
well, I
Because
think
they could just
I think
claim
there's
that
enough air.
it goes far enough, right?
I think there's that the air defense systems in neighboring, not neighboring, but nearby countries like China would be able to identify this sort of, aerial object that's in the air. But I guess it also depends on where they do the test and or even
No,
if they do the
it's just more
test.
so like, can the missile actually go that far? Right? They
Right.
might test like a quote ICBM.
I just feel like it'd be hard to like, uh, launch a little mini missile and then say, oh yeah,
That
that
was
that was the one. And China's like, we saw it on our radar. That was an ICBM.
yeah,
What are you guys
that
talking
was just a
about?
paper airplane that Kim
Exactly.
shut off, and they had some sparklers behind it. Um,
Um, so I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think I re my instinct is to say that it'll happen if Kim feels threatened by the new U.S. administration, and he'll feel
or he just
threatened.
domestically feels like he needs to show force, right? He could also just do it because if he's revealed this already that he has this missile, quote unquote, back in October, the question is he gonna have it out and try it out? It'd be
That's a
interesting to see
good
like when
question.
they announced other things and versus like when they tested it.
There's a story I was going to bring up earlier, just in terms of geopolitical news, that is related to this. In the Czech Republic, back in 2014, there were plans to build a state-controlled nuclear reactor. Plans got scrapped, and people are waiting basically for the Czech Republic to put out a tender. People are waiting to bid to build a new nuclear reactor in the Czech Republic. And on the list of people waiting to bid is South Korea. So if South Korea started building a nuclear reactor in the Czech Republic, saying, oh, it's just for, carbon light energy moving forward, but really it's so that they can start developing their own. or continue developing their own nuclear weapons, maybe that would be enough to push Kim to take action. I don't know, but it seems like he is a big fan of shows of force, so I think he'll need to feel like there needs to be a show of force.
He has done one every single year.
An ICBM.
No, he hasn't tested a single ICBM, I don't think. No, he did a
I think no
submarine
one's.
launch. He did an intermediate range ballistic missile, short range, short range, short range. Here, I'll go through Wikipedia here. Um, oh, well, there's one that made
Maybe
it.
it's like,
They launched an ICBM in 2017 that made it
yeah,
28.
I think they did
They made it
too.
4,500. Yep, another one 2017. And the one.
I think that's when we all got the alerts on our phone uh,
Oh yeah, another
about something
ICBM.
going to
Well, it tells you
Alaska.
about my reading comprehension skills. There's a lot of ICBMs. Your boy just not reading at all. IC, ICBM. So one, two, three. They've tested three? And when did they announce the first ICBM?
I think it was 20. I feel like it was all 27, or at least it
No, when
started
did
in
they like announce
2017.
it?
Oh,
Like, did they like announce it
I can't imagine much. It would be interesting because apparently
here?
they paraded around an ICBM in October of last year during a parade. Um, so perhaps there's some pattern between showing off an ICBM and launching it.
Yeah, actually, there wasn't like a pre-announcement. It doesn't look like. And they did for this other one? Okay, so it's probably pretty likely. The one thing that is interesting is if you look here, let me so you can see it.
But are they showing it
Um,
off so that they don't have to actually launch it? Is the question, I
the
think.
community predictions, if you look at them, have become a little more bullish over time.
Do you just want to describe what you're seeing
Yeah,
for the
so if you look at the
listeners?
all-time ones, there's just a higher percentage of them that's say 70% plus. And right now there's just a few more that's in the 50% and below. In particular down below, there's looks like some two people or maybe three that have claimed the 20% probability. Um,
Mm-hmm. Seems like there's actually a pretty steep drop off in terms of people's confidence
yeah,
in
recently, you see
early
that?
February. Yeah, in
I
early
mean, it's
February, it
nowhere
went
near
from
like it's still right. The bottom range was still lower in the past, but definitely has dipped down a bit.
75 to, I guess, 70% now, a 5% drop in it looks like, the course of a day. I'm not sure what happened on February 9th, was it?
I feel like we've
February 10th?
definitely gone over our 5 minutes, so
Start making a prediction?
let's start making a prediction.
Okay. Well, so I think we can start. How do you feel just relative to where the community is right now? Do you feel like it's higher or lower than that 70%?
Given that people have been trending a little, I would say like slightly below it, but not maybe like 66, like really like not much different, like two-thirds perhaps. Um, I
I
mean,
agree
it
that
could
it's
be a
lower.
coin flip, like 50-50. Could also reflect my confidence on my ability to predict this question as of right now. Because I think if you looked at, they revealed it in 2017, tested 2017, then no test 2018, 2019, 2020. Could they go big in 2021 with the new administration? I mean, I could buy that. I could also buy the fact they just they're not going to test it this year because of COVID, right? Still complicating things. The fact they only tested one missile at all in 2020. Um, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm thinking lower as well. I think there's, a few constraints, COVID included, that maybe would make the chances of them testing one of these missiles less likely. I think also maybe this is completely irrelevant, um, but something I was just thinking about. I remember at the last Olympics, I'm pretty sure North Korea and South Korea formed like a joint Korea team to compete. Um, there is an Olympics scheduled for this year. I'm curious as to whether or not, if it's not canceled, that plays any role in North Korea's decision to sort of antagonize the rest of the world versus in this very trying time, try and come together, run back what they did last time with South Korea, um, you know, and not launch a missile. So I don't know, but I do agree lower. You said 66,
To 50, yeah.
66 to 50. That's a pretty decent range. I think I'm leaning more towards that coin toss likelihood, um, than being, probable. But I could get behind somewhere in the 55 to 60% range at the current time.
55 to 60. And I would probably, let's see what this
So if you
looks
want to go to the
like.
higher range and go to 60,
Well, no, I like that at 60. I mean, we are making points both ways, um, which is always a nice thing. I know that's not how you're supposed to do it, not good incentives. But I think that indicates, right, it's more likely than not that it happens. But at the same time, it is, we feel, a coin toss, at least. Right? It's a slightly weighted coin toss, is what we're saying, more or
I think
less.
that's right. I think that's right because it's also what came to mind is like that earthquake logic where like if there's a place that hasn't had an earthquake or like a volcano eruption in a long time, maybe that's a sign that it's time to have one. If North Korea hasn't launched one of these missiles since 2017, and they showed one off at the end of last year, it could be on the horizon. So I think it's more likely than not, but I think there's also a lot of constraints that are sort of pressing that likelihood down a bit.
I do remember actually, so we're gonna go ahead and say the odds that North Korea launches an ICBM again before 2020 to be 60%. Um,
2023, yep.
predict. Did that happen? Yeah, okay, we did. Oh, and we got the median down. That's us. I
Sorry,
do
guys.
think what's going to be interesting, is I remember reading a paper that there was some sort of machine learning algorithm, I believe, with newspapers in the region of North Korea that was able to be a good indicator of if North Korea was going to do a missile or nuclear test. And it'd be interesting to see if we could set up something like that to actually give ourselves a little bit more insight. Because